plus culture and entertainment right here in Minnesota. Tune in and be a part of this vibrant community. For all the details, visit thisqueerbook.com and am950radio.com.
You're struggling with your mortgage. You think about it all the time.
What are we going to do if we lose the house?
It's time to stop thinking and start dialing. Call 1-888-995-HOPE for a free government program that offers expert one-on-one advice about your mortgage options. We've helped over 1 million homeowners, and we want to help you. Call 1-888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for snowy and windy conditions later today with a temp falling to about 25. Tonight, more light snow with a low around 5. And Wednesday, sunny with a high near 21. Discover perfection at Maverick's Real Roast Beef in Roseville. From Philly cheesesteak to crispy chicken, every bite is exceptional. Add freshly cut fries or rings for a winning combo. Visit mavericksbeef.com or find them off Lexington and Roseville. Unforgettable sandwiches. That's Maverick's Real Roast Beef.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting live on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Tuesday. Good to be with you today. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Coming up here in a little bit later on, about a half an hour from right now, Aaron Rupar is going to be joining us. Roops with the Scoops. I have had him on the air for many years, back from when he started in the Twin Cities at City Pages and stuff. Aaron Rupar, of course, Public Notice, and one of the most popular political follows on social media. We're going to talk to him about his heavy lifting he had to do this weekend by watching all the CPAC, which, my God, a sign of the cross for that man. Also coming up here in the 4 o'clock hour, we got Patrick Cooligan from the Minnesota Reformer joining us for his usual weekly visit. Patrick, how are we today?
Doing pretty well. I commend Aaron Rupar. He watches this stuff so you don't have to.
Him and Cataboo, holy gosh. Those two, we salute your service, play. I can't do that. I did this thing up on the blog for a few years during Trump's presidency, was the Trump week for any given week. And I would list all the crazy things that he did. And I started it at the beginning of his administration. And by about, I'm going to guess a year later, it got to be a point where it was such a consuming amount of stuff that the guy was doing that it was taking over my life. I mean, it was to the point where I was missing events for the kids because I was trying to get this thing done. Now, don't get me wrong. I ended up getting a lot of people following the blog because of the Trump week. It just got to be a point where, I mean, I'm not about to hire someone. I couldn't really do that. And it was too much, but it was just crazy.
I used to kind of subject myself to some of the stuff for a little bit of a chuckle, like just how crazy can this stuff get? And then I would kind of think about it. I'm like, millions of people are eating this up. And then I would get angry and I wouldn't be laughing anymore.
Let me give you a better example of this. I just deleted an app off my phone. It was a gaming app, and it had to do with poker. And I like poker, and I occasionally play poker and stuff like that. And but these are apps, and their whole goal is clearly to get you to buy more, spend money on the app. And it became a situation where just in the last week, it wasn't fun anymore. Now, I don't know about you, but I am the kind of person if something's not fun, I'm not putting it into my life. When I did the Trump list, it got to be a point where it wasn't fun. It wasn't funny. It wasn't a quick little thing. It was this, it's a full-time job. I mean, it was like 25, 26 hours a week on top of the regular job I was doing. And I was like, okay, I can't do this. And this app, this poker app, it came to a point where it was like, okay, I get you're trying to make money, but if you're making it miserable, I'm not going to play. And it wasn't just it was, the cards. It clearly was a situation where I was looking at this and the odds of things happening in the way they were, I was just no. And so it wasn't fun. And the reality is I'm not going to do something that's not fun. I've got too little valuable time to myself. I'm at that point in my life. I'm 55 years old. I realize how many days I have left, and the idea of sitting there and doing something that I don't want to do, that's not on my agenda. So Rupar goes on out there and he follows all this stuff, and God bless him. Absolutely, God bless him on that. So 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. For our folks in Illinois, I want to start off with a story down there that it's getting national attention. I'm not surprised that by this at all. This is to do with a rural judge in Illinois. A veteran Illinois judge has been removed from the bench after an oversight panel ruled that he engaged in misconduct and tried to circumvent the law when he reversed an 18-year-old's rape conviction. The Judicial Inquiry Board filed a 3-count amended complaint with the Illinois Courts Commission on January 2023, accusing Adams County Judge Robert Adrian of willful misconduct, conduct that was prejudicial to the administration of the justice, and that brought the justice office into disrepute. And it absolutely did. If you haven't heard about this case, you're not going to be happy here. After a 3-day hearing on the complaint in November, the commission concluded on Friday that instead of just a reprimand or censure, the Quincy, Illinois judge's behavior was ample grounds for removal from the bench. Adrian had engaged in multiple instances of misconduct. He abused his position of power to indulge his own sense of justice while circumventing the law. He lied under oath on multiple occasions and has failed to acknowledge his misconduct, the commission ruled. Much more was required of Adrian, the ruling said. Based on our findings in this case and the commission precedent, we conclude that only appropriate sanction is to remove the judge from the office of the circuit court judge effective immediately. Drew Clinton had just turned 18 years old. Drew Clinton had been turned 18 years old when he was charged in June of 2021 with 3 counts of criminal sexual assault against a 16-year-old girl at a graduation party the previous month. Clinton faced allegations that he knowingly committed sexual acts by threat or by force, and that he committed such acts knowing the girl was unable to consent. In October of 2021, a brief trial ended with Adrian finding Clinton guilty on one of the 3 counts of felony sexual misconduct. The judge revoked Clinton's bond at the time due to the conviction requiring a mandatory minimum 4-year prison term. But months later, Adrian reversed the guilty ruling and said he would not impose the mandatory sentence, saying the 148 days Clinton had served in county jail so far was plenty of punishment. And that's a quote, plenty of punishment for raping somebody, raping a 16-year-old who couldn't consent to the sexual acts. He basically gave them 148 days. Wow. Not even 6 months. That's not even 5 months. It's 2 days less than 5 months, for God's sakes. Plenty of punishment. This happened when this teenager, because he was and is a teenager. No, he was an adult. He was 18 at the time of the rape, the sexual assault. He was an adult. Isn't it funny when it's always someone you want to make excuses for? I'll tell you the most common way you see it is whenever you see a Republican talking about a crime that involves like a 13-year-old black child, the first thing out of their mouth is, they were an adult. They knew what they were doing. Charge him as an adult to a 13-year-old. Meanwhile, when Donald Trump does something, it's like, he's just an innocent guy. You can't hold him. He's got a childish heart. Come on, man. You can't prosecute him for all these things. See, that's how they do it. This judge basically insisting that a grown adult, an 18-year-old, was just merely a teenager as a justification. Wow. I got to tell you the truth. If I was the father of this 16-year-old, the bailiffs would have to stop me from charging the judge's stand. To have someone be found guilty of raping my child and then have that same judge says, lesson learned, and let the rapist go. Oh, I would be livid. By law, the court is supposed to sentence a young man to the Department of Corrections. And Adrian did point out that he said that he had no previous record whatsoever. Well, but he did rape someone. The court will not do that. That is not just. He said there is no way for what happened in this case that this teenager should go to the Department of Corrections. I will not do that. So that he just, once again, he is telling this to the victim. And that is insane. And by the way, this goes both ways. In Minnesota right now, in Minneapolis and Hennepin County, we've got Mary Moriarty as the Hennepin County attorney. And she campaigned on the idea of needed reform in the judicial side of Hennepin County, which was undoubtedly needed. I mean, that is not a question. But she has gotten to the point where she has gone so far to the other side that she's punishing the victims with these slaps on the wrists of the criminals, saying, such things as their brain hasn't formed completely, even though they committed a murder. So henceforth, we're going to sentence them to, home confinement, DoorDash, and Netflix. And yeah, that's not a good idea. That's not justice for the dead person. And I'm not saying hey, you got this thing about brain size, fine, bring it into sentencing, make it part of it. Maybe not the full time. Maybe instead of, say 12 years, it's down to 8 years. Fine. I'm okay with that. But there should be some punishment, shouldn't there? And so in both cases here, coming from both different sides, in this case, he's letting the criminal go because, he's making excuses for him on a conservative level. On the other side of it's this out of this desire to have justice in the system, letting a criminal go on the other way. One thing is the same. It's you're violating the victims here, and you can't do that. You should not be doing that. Clinton was accused of sexually assaulting Cameron Vaughn, who has since come forward publicly after she reached the age of 18. Vaughn told the Associated Press in November that Adrian's reversal left her completely shocked, but determined to remove the judge who she called had made the comments implying that the nature of the graduation party was why she was assaulted. This is what's happened when parents do not exercise their parental responsibilities. When we have adults having parties for teenager, they allowed co-eds and female people to swim in the underwear in their swimming pool, Adrian said at the sentencing hearing. Basically, he slut-shamed the victim. Unbelievable. It's just they allow 16-year-olds to bring liquor to a party. They provide liquor to underage people, and you wonder how these things happen. Well, that's how these things happen. The court is totally disgusted with the whole thing. The problem is this. We can have a discussion about teen drinking, but your argument is that when someone gets drunk, that they somehow volunteer themselves to be raped. And that's not as a judge. This is the judge saying this, for goodness sakes. The reversal caused massive public outcry, with an organization that helps survivors of domestic violence and sexual abuse saying that Adrian's ruling sent a chilling message to other survivors that their behavior would be judged instead of that of the person who harmed them. According to Adams County court records, Adrian said he overturned Clinton's conviction because he felt prosecutors did not meet the burden of proof. He's basically trying his best to bail at this point. But the commission wrote on Friday the judge reversed his guilty finding based on the reconsideration of the evidence and that his conclusion that the state had failed to prove its case to be subterfuge, an attempt to justify the reversal post hoc. After the commission's ruling, Adrian told the Chicago Tribune that removing him from the bench is totally a miscarriage of justice. No, not really. No, actually, no, that doesn't seem like it. It seems like actually the miscarriage of justice is you, sir. I'll tell you what, I got one last thought on this before I get into one other issue with the Massachusetts GOP. I know that's out of left field. That's coming up before we get to Aaron Rupar at the bottom of the hour. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Summer day, 1951. And with the slap of a hand, he had landed as an only son.
Mental health challenges among our youth have reached crisis levels post-pandemic. Anxiety, depression, trauma, and addiction are at unprecedented levels among teens and young adults. Parents, if your adolescent, teen, or young adult is struggling with mental health challenges, empower them with a fresh start at Hazelden Betty Ford. Hazelden Betty Ford can provide a clear path forward for you and your children, in network with most insurance. This message is brought to you by Hazelden Betty Ford, the Minnesota Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Hey, this is Ellie Krug with Ellie 2.0 Radio. Did you know that we've been doing this show for 6 years on AM 950? And it's one of the only, I think it may be the only show about idealism in all of Radioland. And now the show's at 4 o'clock on Saturdays and still from 1 to 2 on Sundays. It'll be part of a new concept, a series of LGBTQ hosted shows and podcasts. Make sure to check it out.
Hey, it's Patrick. February is the month for love. So when's the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it really deserves? If your carpet hasn't been professionally cleaned, you are breathing unhealthy levels of nasty dirt, dander, bacteria, and germs that keep recirculating again and again and again. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home with their Love Your Rug special. Get 3 rooms Zero Resified starting at just $119 and a free hallway. And don't forget dirt and dander's favorite hiding place either, your air ducts. This month, take $75 off when you get your air ducts Zero Res clean. Call Zero Res right now or go online to ZeroResMinnesota.com and say you want the AM 950 special. If you're a business owner, protect your employees and customers by getting your business Zero Resified by the pros at Zero Res. Call today for your commercial cleaning estimate. Backward or forward smells the same. Zero Res.
Hi, I'm Kelly Kirk.
I'm Chad Larson.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
Your hosts for Searching for Service. Tune in to Rotary's influential show and podcast, sharing touching stories of service locally and abroad.
We bring you weekly guests that connect, inform, and inspire our listeners on all things service.
We highlight diverse service opportunities that appeal to both Rotarians and people driven to serve in their communities.
Tune in Sundays at 3 p.m. or anytime via podcast. It's time
to stop searching
and start serving.
Cafe Latte offers made-from-scratch soups, salads, sandwiches, and mouth-watering desserts. So come check out their pizza and wine bar, or get a treat from the bakery made fresh daily. Plus, you can still do online ordering and takeout, along with gift cards. Just go to cafelatte.com and choose from their ever-changing selection of award-winning salads, sandwiches, and soups. Cafe Latte is located off Victoria and Grand and online at cafelatte.com.
Baby, it's hard inside. You're running across my mind. I was twisted, I was over it.
It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Tuesday. Good to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. Just one quick little thing I want to mention about that last story. Okay, one of the things I noticed when I lived in smaller towns out of major metro areas is one of the problems that you have is the amount of connection a person like a judge has with the wealthy people of the community and certain people that are influential who basically try to, hey, we're at the country club and, hey, judge, I got to talk to you about something. Do you think it's really fair to you're ruining that kid's life by throwing him in there? No, he ruined his own life by raping a girl. But if you get them into a situation where there's communication and there's pressure and there's these things that are out there, that happens. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Not so something so egregious as this story, but I've seen it firsthand in small towns because I've lived in small towns. So 952-946-6205. By the way, Eichmann Breezy. Hi, Eichmann Breezy. How you doing? He's listening in today. Has friends out in Greensboro, North Carolina. For some reason, we got a ton of people listening to us in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hello, Greensboro, North Carolina. Salute. Good to have you out there. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. All right, the Massachusetts GOP. Yeah, this wasn't on my dance card today either, but sometimes weird things do happen. So I saw a story from Raw Story and I posted it, and here's the story. One of the candidates to represent Boston area district in the Massachusetts Republican Party's state committee is a avowed neo-Nazi who has pledged the mass expulsion of Jews from the United States. Don't forget, I'll likely get voted into office on March 5th, said Lori Kaufman, posted on her Twitter account over the weekend. Long-term goals are to ban same-sex marriage. They should have never been legalized. And trans will be illegal. Yes, illegal. I will also exile all Jews. According to the local Boston outlet, Universal Hub, Kaufman, who is from Dorchester, is running in the 1st Suffolk County. The RSC divides her love between Kanye West and Hitler. Yes, that Hitler. and blames a COVID-19 shot for giving her stage 4 brain cancer. She was posted a meme of herself holding a payphone with the words, "Hi, Hitler, it's 2024 here, and you're requesting your assistance." Wow. Per the report, Kaufman had been running as a ticket with state committeeman candidate and Cork Park owner Daniel Kelly, but now hates him because he's publicly supported Israel. In the Massachusetts GOP, each RSC district elects one man and one woman to represent the area on the committee. Kaufman is not the only candidate for the women's side in the first Suffolk. Also running is Elizabeth Hines-Farrick, the assistant director of the State Department of Transportation Assistance. It sounds like one of those weird Massachusetts things. That's what it sounds like. Anywho, yeah, holy crud. Now, we could spend hours talking about the fact that this is an actual Nazi, a Hitler-praising Nazi under the umbrella of the Republican Party. And you, as a Republican, may not like me, but there's one thing you cannot deny, is that 30 years ago, your party was nowhere near the Nazis. And if a Nazi tried to become a Republican, your own party would have said, "No, you're out of here. You are not, we have rescinded your party affiliation. You are no longer a Republican." That's just that. Today, you guys have Nazis running all over the place. And wasn't there one in Illinois that was running in Chicago, in the Chicago metro areas, on a race a few years back? These Nazis keep popping up in your party, and that's a big problem. And I know that the right likes to think that the left has got a whole bunch of bad people in there, but there's no one who's who adores Al-Qaeda in the Democratic Party. I know you guys like to say that, that this person loves them. There, of course they do. No, there's no one that supports Al-Qaeda, that thinks Al-Qaeda is great, that's calling for bin Laden to come. It's 2024. We need you. No one is doing that, but they are doing that in the Republican Party right now with Hitler. This is not a both sides do it. This is you guys have got a problem. And I made the post today. I sort of said, just so far that to my knowledge, this person is still a member of the Massachusetts Republican Party. To which I got actually a response from the Massachusetts GOP on this, which I'm kind of okay. Their tweet went, "Ms. Kaufman's hateful rhetoric was addressed via a resolution by the Massachusetts Republican State Committee in December of 2023. Committee member Marty Lamb introduced the resolution. It passed unanimously. The Mass GOP has no tolerance for discrimination." And I'm going to read to you. They sent me the image of this. Resolution 2, resolution of the Massachusetts Republican Committee condemning Lori Kaufman's statements. In the light of the persistent surge of anti-Semitism at home and abroad, the Massachusetts Republican Committee strongly condemns the prejudicial and anti-Semitic statements made by Lori Kaufman, recognizing that such repugnant views are directly against the values of the Republican Party. The committee takes a decisive stand against hatred and bigotry. Therefore, be resolved that the Massachusetts Republican Party unequivocally condemns the prejudiced and anti-Semitic statement made by Lori Kaufman. Resolved that the Massachusetts Republican Party strongly urges that Kaufman withdraw her candidacy for Republican State Committee. This resolution reflects the party's commitment to maintaining an inclusive political environment and sends a clear message that any form of discrimination has no place in the Massachusetts Republican Party. Fine. Why is she still allowed to be a Republican? I mean, you've condemned her. The very basic. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, though. I mean, from what she has said, that's not exactly, slamming it down on the Nuggets here. You basically cleared a very low bar in condemning the pro-Hitler woman. You've urged her to withdraw her nomination. But you are a political party. You could strip her of your party rights and basically say you are not welcome in the Republican Party. That's not what you did. not by what your statement says, not by what your argument is. And once again, yeah, I guess you cleared the lowest bar to condemn the Nazi woman. Fine. Why is she even allowed in your party? I mean, she has said some atrocious things. And we all know, we all know why you guys don't do it. Because you need the Nazi vote. And that's not just Massachusetts. It's Minnesota, it's Illinois, it's everywhere in the country. The Republicans got such a thin, razor-thin clearance to win, they cannot turn away any votes. So they need the Nazi vote. But for the record, I would not be a member of a party if it became clear there was a candidate in my party who was a full-blown freaking Nazi. I would not tolerate being part of that party anymore. I would demand that that person be thrown out. And guess what? The Republicans don't seem to be wanting to do that. Aaron Rupar when we come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
I'm standing up for the middle class. Tom Hartman here on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, AM 950, KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Tom Hartman here to tell you about St. Paul-based All Energy Solar. All Energy Solar has been providing solar energy solutions to customers since 2009. Their turnkey services mean that from start to finish, you don't need to worry since they do everything from initial estimates to custom-built designs that best meet your energy needs. Right now, All Energy Solar has special promotions going on through the end of March, and government entities and utility companies are offering various solar incentives. All Energy Solar is here to help. Their solar experts know the ins and outs of what incentives you can qualify for. And with their turnkey services, they'll also help with applications. If you want to go solar, now is the time to do it. The sooner you get in contact, the sooner you can run your home on sunshine. Get a free solar quote by visiting allenergysolar.com. Call 800-620-3370 or visit allenergysolar.com.
Returning Saturday, March 2nd to AM 950, and every Saturday, March through October, it's Garden Talk Radio, Saturdays from 7 to 8 a.m. It's the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show, topic-focused, guests from across the country, and answering your garden questions. Submit your questions now to gardentalkradio@gmail.com or call anytime to 1-800-927-SHOW. That's every Saturday morning from 7 to 8 a.m., March through October, right here on AM 950.
Hi, I'm Scott Shambot from Shambot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, shame-free dental office. If you're having a dental emergency, we'll try and get you in the same day you call because we don't like to see anyone in pain. And we'll help you get through every appointment in the most pain-free way possible. As my daughter Rachel says,
if you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shamblat Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblatfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
This is AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
It's an absolute must for any true foodie. Vinaigrette at 50th and Xerxes in South Minneapolis offers premium oils and vinegars for the most discriminating of tastes. This is Sarah Piepenberg, owner of Vinaigrette. We bottle on-site, there's no guesswork, and you get to taste test each and every oil and vinegar we offer. Our direct relationship with the growers ensures an uncompromised level of satisfaction. When you need to know you're cooking with the finest ingredients, first contact the independently owned Vinaigrette, 50th and Xerxes in South Minneapolis. Online at vinaigrettemn.com.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for snowy and windy conditions later today with a temp falling to about 25. Tonight, more light snow with a low around 5. And Wednesday, sunny with a high near 21. Discover perfection at Maverick's Real Roast Beef in Roseville. From Philly cheesesteak to crispy chicken, every bite is exceptional. Add freshly cut fries or rings for a winning combo. Visit mavericksbeef.com or find them off Lexington and Roseville. Unforgettable sandwiches. That's Maverick's Real Roast Beef.
Broadcasting in the evening on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoon on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Aaron Rupar, Roops with the Scoops, is kind enough to join us. We've been talking to him for years. Of course, Public Notice is his exceptional site that you can find all sorts of great information on that he's covering the news that no one else really wants to do it, and he does it so well. Public notice, let's just call it public service, because it is a public service. This man watched CPAC this weekend, and he deserves a medal and an award and a parade and a ceremony. Aaron Rupar, kind enough to join us today to talk about that and some other things. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Okay, so you watched CPAC. How many years have you watched the entire CPAC and reported on it?
I was trying to actually figure this out over the weekend, at least since 2018.
Wow.
And I think I watched 17, and at that time I wasn't quite in the mode of live tweeting and posting videos, but I remember writing a couple articles for Think Progress at the time about the 2017 CPAC. But in terms of threads that you can find on Twitter of me posting videos of all the various speeches and whatnot, 2018.
From watching it and observing it as you have for so many years, and once again, thank you for your service, sir. What did you notice? What was different about this year or the last few years? What's changed there at CPAC that you witnessed?
Well, the one that stands out for sure, and this isn't new to this year, but it's kind of been a gradual transformation over the years, is how it's really become just a celebration of Trump. And there was a little bit like the 2021 installment, I remember being kind of interesting because that was in around this time, late February, early March. So it was shortly after January 6th. And I remember that, there was a little bit of squishiness. There were a couple speakers who obliquely said that you had critical things to say about January 6th and things like that. But then Trump delivered the keynote, and that was actually one of the big milestones in terms of him kind of being rehabbed in the Republican Party and solidifying, his continued dominance over it. And, so that was definitely the case this year again. But the one thing that I think was a little bit different this year, even compared to last year, years prior, is that there are far fewer members of Congress speaking. Mm-hmm. It really feels like CPAC has become kind of more of a fringe event in that way, with a lot of right-wing media people, kind of like local politicians. And so it was kind of lacking in star power. You had the big Trump speech at the end, and, you had J.D. Vance, Tommy Tuberville spoke, a few people like that. But, in terms of content for me, it was a lot of speakers that I wasn't familiar with, and that tends to make it a little bit less interesting. And you could see that in the attendance where, especially for the sessions that were pre the Trump speech on the last day, there were a lot of empty seats. It just didn't seem like there was as much buzz this year for whatever reason.
Yeah, so that was not just an illusion that this is, once again, at this core event, which is really appealing to Trump's core base. There was an attendance issue this year.
Yeah, I mean, you could really notice it in the crowd responses where it just didn't sound like a lot of the speakers were getting very loud responses at all. And then when they would pan to the audience, you could see it. There were a lot of empty seats. And that was not the case for Trump's speech. It seemed like he still packed the room, and it was kind of the normal Trump audience for a CPAC speech. But, I'm not sure if that's kind of the chicken and egg thing, where I'm not sure if the attendance was down because they had kind of less noteworthy speakers, or, if it kind of went the other way, where the fact that it's not drawing like it used to, kind of results in them not being able to get the top conservative people speaking there. But you could very much notice that attendance was down in the earlier sessions.
He comes off that. South Carolina, of course, as well this weekend. And I wanted to get your thoughts. As a person that's been watching this too, one of the things that I've been kind of raising an eyebrow, to me at least, is this 30 to 40% of the Republican Party that definitely does seem to be turned off of Donald Trump. Now, that whether or not that translates to November, we should remind everybody that in 2020, Trump got more votes than in 2016. So a lot of people who said, I've had it with Trump and babies in cages, still voted for Trump. That being said, this South Carolina run, and once again in Nikki Haley's home state, 40%, that's a pretty big problem. I went back and looked at Carter versus Kennedy in 1980. And for the most part, Carter never had too many, there was a few showings in Massachusetts went Kennedy's way and stuff like that, but it wasn't this bad yet. This is kind of the thing that people don't want to talk about. Your analysis, as you've looked at this, is there just really not anything there, or is this something more that, really needs to be talked about in a larger discussion?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that's, a dynamic that a lot of the mainstream media coverage kind of glosses over, is the fact that Trump, for all intents and purposes, is an incumbent. If you ask him, he won the 2020 election. And while I don't think a lot of people necessarily believe that, he has all the trappings of incumbency, where he controls the whole party. You know, Ronna McDaniel steps down as RNC chair, and it seems like he's basically going to pick his daughter-in-law to kind of step in there. You know, so he controls the Republican Party, similar to how an incumbent president does. And so when you have 40% of voters in a place like South Carolina not voting for him, yeah, I mean, I think that does speak to, you know, some discontent with him. You know, on the other side of that, though, I really don't know if that's going to translate to November. I mean, we've seen this time and time again now with Trump, where you go back to 2016, you have the Access Hollywood tape in October. You have all these Republicans coming out that month and kind of calling on him in some cases to get out of the race and things like that. But when push came to shove, most of them still voted for Trump. So I don't know if this really, you know, signals any sort of big time trouble for him in November. I mean, you know, still when you look at credible polling that's coming out on a daily or weekly basis, you know, it's pretty much neck and neck. Some polls have Biden up, some polls have Trump up, but, you know, that's going to be our lot this year as a country, is that we're going to have to sweat out another very close election. That's probably going to come down to 2 or 3 states. And so I don't, you know, personally have the idea that Trump, you know, only getting 60% in South Carolina is going to signal anything negative for him come November. But I do think it's notable that, you know, for a guy who's running basically as an incumbent, 40% of Republicans not voting for him, that means something. And I do think that, you know, that should be part of the conversation when we talk about results like what just happened in South Carolina.
Well, is it a case where, I mean, is there a number for you that you say to yourself, okay, fine, if 40%, sure, 30% of that is going to go vote for him. But where's a number for you where you say to yourself, if this amount of Republicans stay home, really did get turned off by January 6th and all these criminal indictments, if this percent stays home, Trump really has no path to victory? Is there a number there that you've seen? You've kind of formulated?
You know, I haven't formulated that. And again, I guess just with the assumption that I'm working with, which is that most Republicans will ultimately come home and vote for him instead of Joe Biden. Now, you know, if there's even 5% that do, you know, end up deciding that they can't vote for him, you know, maybe they voted for him in 2020, but January 6th was just a bridge too far. I mean, 5% could turn 5% of Republicans can turn a very close election into an easy Biden win. So that is something that Trump has to sweat this year for sure. But, you know, I think we would see that showing up a little bit more in the polling in a way that we haven't thus far, where it seems like Trump is basically polling very close to where he was polling in 2020, you know, heading into that election, which we assumed was going to be a nail biter and was pretty close, even though Biden, you know, in the Electoral College had a pretty large margin. So, yeah, in terms of, I haven't broken down the polling to that level. I mean, I am watching tonight in Michigan on the Democratic side to see, you know, what the percentage ends up being for the uncommitted voters who choose not in the Democratic primary to vote for Biden. And, you know, based on what I've seen from some of the previous results in Michigan, it seems like if that number is between like 15 and 20%, that's, you know, pretty significant. And it depends what Democratic voters you talk to there, whether they're making that vote out of, you know, a way to kind of leverage Biden at this stage, and they still have every intention of voting for him in November, or if they really are out altogether on him. So, you know, you kind of have interesting, similar dynamics on both sides of this race right now. But yeah, those are both things to look for tonight, although it seems like on the Republican side, Trump, by all indications, is going to beat Nikki Haley even by a wider margin in Michigan than he did in South Carolina.
I think that your point about the Democrats, and if you vote for, you know, anyone but Biden, is the reality is it's going to be Trump and Biden. So if you don't vote for Biden, it's by proxy a vote for Trump. So you got to keep that in mind. I did like that. Nikki Haley, though, is in a unique position because even though Trump wants to basically, you know, just trash her, he absolutely has to have the vast majority of Nikki Haley supporters in the fold at the end. So she's going to have some level of power here. Now, I don't think the vice presidency is on the table there, but do you see Nikki Haley at some capacity, whether it's going back to the UN, being the secretary of the UN, or something of that nature? I mean, she has some power to where she can get a position within that Trump administration if she wants it.
That's been really fascinating to me because I thought that in the early stages of her campaign, she was really pulling her punches and, you know, seemed to be kind of refusing to criticize Trump. And so in that way, I really thought she was kind of angling either to be on the ticket or for some sort of role in, you know, possible second Trump administration. But it seems like that's really changed over the last month. You know, basically when it became just her and Trump as the last two standing, it seems like she really started sharpening her attacks and calling Trump unhinged and highlighting his legal difficulties, highlighting, you know, in her mind, his failure to deal with national debt. You know, just kind of the laundry list. I mean, there are, you know, and I've detailed this in the newsletter, some areas that she doesn't seem to want to stray into in terms of criticizing Trump over January 6th or the election denialism. So there are certain kind of third rails that she doesn't want to touch, but it seems like at this point, the bridge is kind of burned. Trump has kind of unloaded on her, calling her bird brain and using birther smears, mocking her birth name.
Yep.
Those kind of crude tactics that we've seen him use, over the years on other Republican challengers. And so I just don't get the sense that, the Trump's base would have any appetite for her having a significant role. Certainly not on the ticket as VP, but I think that the criticism has gotten to a point where I couldn't really see her serving in the administration at all. And so then I guess maybe the play is if she really does think that Trump is going to lose, which she's been very direct in saying that if he's the candidate, he's going to lose to Joe Biden, then does that position her possibly as someone who could run in 2028 and kind of take the mantle of post-Trumpism? Maybe she's thinking along those lines, but to get back to your question, I have very much thought I found it to be interesting that her attacks have very much gotten sharper over the past month or so, to a point where I think she's really kind of burned that bridge behind her.
Aaron Rupar, kind enough to join us once again. Public Notice is the newsletter you need to subscribe to. You have a post here about an hour ago. We're heading for a shutdown here because the House Republicans are controlled by the Howler Monkey caucus over there. You put out here, why don't you go through what are some of the things the House Republicans are demanding to avoid a shutdown at this point?
Yeah, and this was based on reporting from the New York Times, that didn't cite specific members, but kind of tick through some of the demands that members are making of Mike Johnson as they try to, either cobble together some sort of spending deal or, we careen towards a shutdown. And one was restricting the distribution of abortion medications. Another was no new funding for any sort of food assistance for kids, families, infants, and then the third, which you probably have in front of you, I don't have the list right in front of me.
The VA one, it can no longer flag veterans deemed mentally incompetent for gun background checks. So yeah, you can't,
right.
Heaven forbid you have someone who probably should not have a weapon not getting a weapon.
Right, and now let me add to that though that both Speaker Mike Johnson and minority leaders Jeffries and Schumer, Senate Majority Leader, and then McConnell were at the White House today meeting with Biden. And coming out of that meeting, there seemed to be, based on statements that each of them made, with the exception of McConnell, made to the press, a lot of optimism that a deal will be reached. And, it does kind of seem like Johnson is ready to just kind of kick the can down the road. Mm-hmm. Based on reporting I saw, he told members not to expect any major conservative policy wins in whatever deal they reach together. And he kind of primed them that they might have a couple smaller wins, but I think some of the things that we just listed, I don't think any of that's going to make it into the spending deal. So I do get the sense as of this afternoon that they will figure something out to kind of keep the status quo going. I believe there's really kind of a harder deadline that comes up in April where they have to have more of a yearly spending deal reached by that point, or there will be, shutdown then. But my sense is that they're going to kick the can down the road for another 6 weeks or so.
And the one thing that's interesting, we had about a minute here left, but at the same time, that restricting access to abortion medication, the Republicans are desperately trying to turn the overturning of Roe v. Wade into a win. Even Johnson, though, I think that's going to be a hard sell for him because he knows that is such an unpopular issue with the general voting public at this point.
Yeah, we've seen that with the whole IVF thing in Alabama this week where, it's like the dog who caught the car where, they can kind of have whatever restrictions they want to have in these states, but they're so unpopular that they're facing electoral backlash in general elections. And that's been the one consistent theme that we've seen since June of 2022 when the Dobbs decision overturned Roe is that Republicans, in these general election contests, even in red and purple states, are really struggling and abortion is a top issue. And so, it's another thing to keep in mind that will really favor Democrats throughout this year.
Aaron Rupar, if you're not following him on every social media site, you're just wrong. You also need to be following his exceptional newsletter. That is Public Notice. You can go get subscribed. I'm subscribed. You need to be subscribed to that. Aaron, excellent as always. I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much on a Tuesday.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
Take care. Aaron Rupar. And once again, if you get the chance, follow him on the Public Notice newsletter. That is a must, an absolute must every day. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
The new year and the new eagle have arrived at the National Eagle Center. When you visit this winter season, you can meet and learn about the newest bald eagle ambassador. Perseus. Plus, the center is your headquarters for Winter Eagle information and experiences, including weekly winter bald eagle counts, golden eagle information, unforgettable expert-led field trips, and small group private eagle habitat tours for your friends and family. Make eagles part of your 2024 and plan your visit or experience today online at nationaleaglecenter.org.
This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, weekdays at 5 p.m. On our show, you'll hear about Native issues like treaties, protecting Mother Earth, and holding our elected officials accountable. Weekly correspondents like Dr. Stately, State Senator Mary Kunesh, Robert Lilligren, and Bob Blake update us with the latest news from Turtle Island. Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues. Listen weekdays at 5 p.m. or watch the show on Native Roots Radio social media accounts. Ho-wah!
No matter if you're eating out or cooking something at home, eatlocalminnesota.com has you covered with a list of locally owned restaurants and food purveyors. Locally owned Vinaigrette has been offering the finest olive oil and vinegar since 2009. Reintroduce yourself to all the many flavors by tasting before you buy. From darker white balsamic to cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil from all over the world, there is something for everyone. Vinaigrette, located at 50th and Xerxes in Minneapolis, or at vinaigrettemn.com. The Park Tavern is your go-to destination for fun. Enjoy the fantastic food like their pizzas, burgers, and sandwiches, the best bowling in Minnesota, their wildly popular outdoor patio, great drink specials, all the big games on their numerous screens, and it's the perfect place for your next private event, even large gatherings for over 200. The Park Tavern is your go-to destination for everyone. Have fun at the Park Tavern, Louisiana Avenue, north of Highway 7 in St. Louis Park.
Connections Radio Show is all about tapping into our hardwired hunger to connect. We examine meaningful connections to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. By opening the door to innovative insights by a wide variety of interesting guests, we'll make the connections to something bigger than ourselves. Join me, Lori Fitz, your host of Connections Radio Show, and together we'll make the connections. Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Do you want a fast way to save money? It's easy with Rudy Luther Toyota. Start with the Luther Advantage Card. With every new and used vehicle purchase, you'll get 3 years of 10 cents off per gallon of gas at holiday station stores, as well as discounted Works car washes for only $6. Plus, the Luther Advantage Card gets you other benefits too. See their website for details. And Rudy Luther Toyota wants to buy your used vehicle. They'll ensure a great offer. Go to RudyLutherToyota.com for the details. Saving money and getting you a fair price is easy with Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Good to have you with us once again here on your Tuesday. Aaron Rupar, man, if you're not following him. And like I said, we've had him on the air. I've been on this radio station for 14 years, basically 14 years. I think we've been having him on the air for 12 of those years. Back when he started in local media here. And now, what's his 900,000 followers on Twitter alone? And yeah, and public notice is fantastic. I want to get back to that one thing we talked about at the end then. That this is apparently, and the New York Times is reporting this, that these are some of the threats that the Republicans are putting out there to keep the government from shutting down. House Republicans loaded up their spending bills with hundreds of partisan policy mandates, a vast a majority of which had no chance of passing. They include measures to target various pieces of Mr. Biden's agenda, such as the one to restrict access to abortion medication and another to restrict the Department of Veterans Affairs from flagging veterans deemed mentally incompetent in a federal background check needing to buy a gun. With just 4 days remaining before the funding lapses for roughly a quarter of the government, some of those issues are emerging as major sticking points in negotiations to reach a deal to keep the money from flowing. As well as also they've come on out. The Republicans are also objecting to a proposed increase in federal programs aimed at providing nutrition assistance for low-income families, as well as for women and for infants. Mind you, I want to remind you, the hypocrisy of the Republicans. They're basically saying you can't have abortions anymore, but we're not going to help you, and you're sure not going to get any food assistance from the government either. So we are so pro-life, we're going to starve that kid. Yeah, okay, that doesn't seem to make sense. Do you remember yesterday on the show? I remember yesterday. It was just like yesterday. Yesterday I was here, and I made the point about the difference between what I am standing for, what the left is standing for in this country, and what the right is standing for right now, and particularly the MAGA world. Not necessarily all Republicans, but MAGA for sure. And that the one side is, I care about you. I want to help you. It's about love. It's about, I don't want to see you suffering. I don't want to see you hungry. I don't want to see you, needlessly dying. I don't want that. And that the Republicans have basically become the polar opposite of that. They don't care about you. They don't care. They basically just want to wash their hands of you because it's selfishness wrapped in a bit of ignorance. And so that's the fight we have right now. You either are for helping people or you're for hurting people. And I want to run this little 3-list checklist that Rupar posted here. And let's make sure we go through this. Now, me personally, I don't want to necessarily hurt women's rights to choose their life for themselves. So I'm not going to chain women to beds. I'm not going to basically charge, a lab tech with murder because a test tube containing a frozen embryo was accidentally dropped. I'm not going to do that. I don't believe in punishing people because I disagree with something that they are doing. Republicans, they're trying to force their will on you. Not because it's better for you, but because they just don't want you thinking for yourself. Restrict the VA from flagging veterans deemed mentally incompetent for gun background checks. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army. Yes, that's right. I was at one point your first line of defense. Yeah. I'm a veteran, and I will tell you right now, there are people who are veterans of the military who should not have guns because they have severe mental issues from their time in service. And we have had case after case where we have had mentally compromised veterans get access to a gun, and it does not end well. It ends actually quite horribly. And so I'm of the mindset, I appreciate the individual. I want to get them the mental help that they need. I don't think arming them so that they can shoot as many people as possible, if they so deem, is a good idea. Doesn't mean that eventually we can't revisit that issue, but if they're deemed to be mentally, incompetent to own a gun, then giving them a gun is a bad idea. And it's only going to hurt the population. And by the way, I'll make sure I mention as well, most Republicans are against funding the mental health for the veterans that they need. And then, of course, the so-called Christians of the MAGA movement can't get out of their way fast enough to basically stop food assistance for the poor, the women, and for the infants, which is the absolute and complete opposite that any Christian should be at. And this is the point when the Republican Christian right comes out and said, well, there's a separation between church and state. Oh, it's nice to see. The made-up stuff that you attribute to Jesus, that stuff has to stay in there. But the actual things that Jesus told us to do, well, separation of church and state. No, you're the people that basically have insisted that there can be no birth control. There can be no family planning. It's basically, heck, we can go with that Illinois judge. Even if you get raped, well, she was kind of asking for it, is the mentality he put forward. Thank God he's off the bench. The reality is you're heartless people that do not care about your fellow man. Because if you cared about people, if you love people, if you were there in their best interest, you would say to the people that are in every single district in this country, let's take care of the hungry and make sure at the very least they've got some food. And here they are, once again, high-fiving because they're pulling formula and food out of babies' mouths. It really is that simple. One side of this debate is trying to help people, is trying to make sure people have a good quality of life, is trying to make sure people get paid well, have health care, have food, don't have to worry about being shot all the time, can make their own medical decisions. The other side says, no, it's our way or the highway. And, you know, there's an old meme that was put out by a Canadian, and I loved it. He says, why does every election in America seem like this? On one side, it's everybody gets a puppy, and on the other side, it's diarrhea for life. And it's the puppy only leads by 0.2 over the diarrhea for life. That's just the way it is right now. Chicago, have a good one. We're back on a Wednesday. Minneapolis, St. Paul, hour 2 up next.
Hi, this is Philip Anthony, the host of the Downright Upright Show, which is on the air on Saturdays at 5 p.m. I personally want to thank you for supporting my show and for supporting AM 950. So in turn, we want to celebrate you by dedicating February as Listener Appreciation Month. All month long, we will be giving away prizes to our listeners and creating ways to better connect with you. Follow AM 950 social media accounts for chances to win. So join us by making February fantabulous.
Greg Bakken here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com.
Hey, Minnesota, it's your favorite sexy liberal. Join me and my fellow cohorts in liberal justice weekdays from 8 to 11 on AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. Border security, possible government shutdown, and aid for Ukraine and Israel were all discussed at the White House today by President Biden and the 4 top leaders in Congress. The stalemate over aid for Ukraine continues, and the White House wants the House Republican leader to move faster. Here's the AP's Sagar Magani.
Speaker Mike Johnson still is not committing to a vote on the aid package, but says the House is looking at options.
And we will address that in a timely manner.
At the White House.
What do you mean by that? I can tell you, to the Ukrainian soldier on the battlefront, timeliness is now.
National Security spokesman John Kirby.
We're already, in some ways, too late.
Saying Ukrainian forces have lost one key town due in part to a lack of ammunition.
They are certainly beginning to lose territory that they had clawed back from the Russians. And now they have to give it back to the Russians because they can't fight them off.
Kirby says the Ukrainians simply deserve better.
It's not running out of courage, they're running out of bullets.
Sagar Magani, Washington.
Lawmakers in Alabama are looking for ways to protect in vitro fertilization services in the state. Some patients have had procedures canceled following a ruling by the Alabama Supreme Court. Governor Kay Ivey says Alabama wants to foster a culture of life, including IVF.
The legislature is diligently working on addressing this issue as we speak. And I anticipate having a bill on my desk very shortly while ensuring that the legislature has time to get this right.
A bill in Florida to allow people to file wrongful death lawsuits over the death of a fetus is being shelved because of the political fallout over the ruling in Alabama. West Virginia's Republican majority Senate greenlit a bill that would make a video on fetal development produced by an anti-abortion group required viewing in public schools. Stocks finished mixed. The Dow down 96 points. This is AP News.
Tax Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. This tax season, you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a Samsung Galaxy A14 included when you buy an extended Silver Unlimited plan. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah!
Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at straighttalk.com. For network management practices, visit straighttalk.com. Device offer ends 4/14/24. Online only. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
Hi, this is Scott Trout of Cordell & Cordell. There are a lot of great dads out there. Sometimes those dads get divorced. For more than 30 years, we have represented men in divorce, confronting the pitfalls that could devastate your finances or harm your family relationships. While every situation is different, our goal is to get the best outcome for you and your kids. Visit CordellCordell.com to take the first step.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Twin Cities attorneys, a partner men can count on. CordellCordell.com.
Paid for.
Now at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, the Morso wood stoves qualify for a 30% tax credit.
Morso wood stoves earned the Nordic Swan Eco Label, Europe's most rigorous environmental standard. Here in the U.S., these Morso wood stoves qualify for the 30% federal tax credit. This is a credit of up to $2,000 off your income tax when you install efficient wood heating. Morso wood stoves are known for elegant Danish design, made of quality cast iron. This is furniture that radiates heat and warmth. Morso brings the tradition of wood heating into the 21st century.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has been selling wood-burning products since 1977. Morso is an important part of our diverse selection of fireplace products. We want to make fire work for you. Let us show you how Morso wood-burning stoves can work in your home.
Get in touch with the folks at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. They are the chimney and installation experts. Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces has over 35 working wood, gas, and electric units on display at the corner of East Franklin and Riverside Avenue in Minneapolis.
Located just north of 50th in France, the Great Wall Restaurant has provided a delicious taste of authentic Chinese cuisine since 1981. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking dishes, they offer one of the most extensive menus in the Twin Cities. Favorites include hot and sour soup, pan-fried dumplings, and mushu pork with homemade Chinese pancakes. Stop by their Edina location or call for takeout at 952-927-4439. See the full menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for snowy and windy conditions later today with a temp falling to about 25. Tonight, more light snow with a low around 5. And Wednesday, sunny with a high near 21. Discover perfection at Maverick's Real Roast Beef in Roseville. From Philly cheesesteak to crispy chicken, every bite is exceptional. Add freshly cut fries or rings for a winning combo. Visit mavericksbeef.com or find them off Lexington and Roseville. Unforgettable sandwiches. That's Maverick's Real Roast Beef.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Hour number 2 of the show here on your Tuesday. Matt and Patrick and Brett's in studio after 2 weeks of being gone. Hi, Brett. How are you?
It's been a while. Yeah, I forgot how to be in this seat here and do my interviews with Patrick Kulik. And I think I got back into it, though. So.
All right. We'll get to that here in a second here. We'll just give an update on the weather because this has been weird. They said we were going to get 2 inches of snow. Or an inch of snow. They said we're going to get an inch of snow. But then through the day today, they basically went from an inch down to a dusting down to nothing. And it's only in the last hour or so they've come back and said, when we thought that storm was going to break up, it never broke up. And so we have snow in the metro right now, not here at the Palatial Broadcasting Complex in Eden Prairie, but basically just north of us up on Minnetonka, Plymouth, and the Northwest Metro, moving across. How much we get, I don't know. They're saying now an inch is, I think they're saying an inch is most we're going to get, but they're all saying the same thing. Is if it comes down wet at all, it's going to be really cold behind this. So it could get real slippery out there. So be careful, especially if you're heading. It is caucus night here in Minnesota. You're going to go caucus?
I think I might have to go to now. Yeah.
I've got my costume set to go. Oh, it's not Comic-Con. It's caucus. Okay. Sorry. I didn't want to get just like Hawkeye, Here I am. Huzzah.
Oh, I thought you said cockeye, as in like a knockoff of Hawkeye.
I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah, Thanos, that where Thanos held that glove that time. All right. Needless to say, You can't do that.
I guess I can't put him on the
Don't
tee,
do that to me, man. Don't put that out there and the ball in the tee and let me swing away. Caucus night. Now, if people want to know where they need to go caucus at, the Secretary of State's page has that now, and you should know the primaries are the main ones. That's coming up here on Super Tuesday, a week from today, I believe, right? The 5th, right?
Yeah, that's right. We have that hybrid system that we went to a few years ago. Correct.
So it's caucus night tonight, primary night in a week. But go caucus. This is. I think this is how they choose delegates, isn't it? This is how you do it. You kind of go through this process.
Yeah, if you want to attend the national convention, well, you got to make your start tonight, pretty much, to have any sort of chance. So that's fun to do that too. I've only gone. What was one level before the state one? I've at least gone that far in terms of advanced.
Really?
Yeah.
So district. You went to the district, the House districts.
Yeah.
I'm in now. I'm in 3, so I'm with Dean Phillips. It's gonna be interesting to see what that's gonna be like.
I don't think he's gonna be attending caucus tonight.
I think. Well, I'll leave that story for another day. 952-946-6205. I do want to get into this because this is somewhat breaking news that was earlier today. The owner of a Burnsville gun store says he's working with the BCA after the firearm recovered from the scene of the shootout that killed the 3 first responders was traced to his business. Now, it's interesting because after this shooting, there was a lot of discussion about, well, he stole the gun, he bought it out of a gangbanger's car, and there was this quirk. Now, this doesn't apply here, but if he bought the gun prior to August 1st of last year, he technically could legally buy the gun. He just could not own the gun. They closed that loophole last August. But regardless, this purchase actually took place early this year. John McConkey, owner of the Modern Sportsman, in an email to KARE 11 said the AR-15 lower receiver was purchased from an out-of-state online retailer who shipped it to his shop for transfer to the buyer. McConkey says the person who purchased the weapon passed the background check and took possession of the AR-15 January 15, 2024. A lower receiver is the ATF-regulated portion of the AR-15 that is identified by the serial number, and so it can be traced. McConkey says that the person who bought the gun and passed the background check is now under investigation for allegedly committing a felony straw purchase, as the weapon ended up in the possession of the accused shooter, Shannon Gooden. He was legally prohibited from possessing firearms due to the felony conviction. The quote, the Modern Sportsman had no way of knowing the lower receiver would end up in the convicted felon prohibited person's possession. The prohibited person was not there during the transfer process, nor was his name on any enclosed documents. He says he's working with the BCA to determine how the gun ended up in Gooden's possession. 2 things I want to point out about this. First of all, apparently it's not you do not have to report a stolen gun as stolen in this state. I'm going to presume that that's going to change, because my guess is going to be whoever did buy this gun, whether they stole, they bought it with the intention of selling it to Gooden, or if it truly was, hey, it was stolen, I don't know what happened to it. And there really is nothing you can do to hold that person accountable. That's really all that they can say. I imagine, with as upset as everyone is about this, that you're about to get your life under a microscope. But technically, he could argue this, and I do not believe there's a law in the state that says you have to report a stolen gun. If that was what I read, my guess is, if that's the case, that they are definitively going to have, by the end of this session over in St. Paul right now, they'll have a law in the books that says you have to report a stolen gun.
Yeah, that would seem to defeat the purpose of a lot of gun laws. If you lose your gun and don't have to report it, I mean, that can go anywhere, as the case would happen right here.
And these people on the right that keep screaming these gun kooks, there's plenty of laws in the books. These laws are so willy-nilly, patchwork, loophole-ridden, that you need to have better laws. And this is a prime example of this. And I want to go to my second point. I have called for a 20-year minimum sentence for someone that buys and then sells a gun illegally. Mm-hmm. And if that was in the case, you might have stopped that right here. That law was in the books. This individual might not have given that gun to the shooter. And I think you have to start treating this would take care of all these loopholes, all these hitches that are in the law. This would take care of them immediately if you just had an airtight, you sell a gun illegally in the state of Minnesota, you're going to jail. If you had that, guess what?
Need to treat it a lot like with alcohol. If you buy something for a minor, you get in a lot of trouble if they cause an accident or do anything like that. We need something similar with guns, where if you're going to buy something illegally for someone, you got to be held responsible.
Well, I'm already anticipating the right-wingers coming on out there and saying something to the effect of, well, Matt, I'm not happy about the police officers and the first responder being shot, but, sometimes, the path to freedom is sometimes a little messy. You can already see them saying that we shouldn't do this. No, this is clearly the problem. You have gaps within the purchasing process that allows someone to be able to get their hands on this gun. We need to shut that down. And if you shut it down by saying, hey, if you want to be a straw man, fine, you're going to jail for 20 years. Guess what? That would dry up the illegal gun sales immediately. I mean, not saying completely, but I guarantee you there'd be a lot less illegal guns on the streets, because like in Chicago, would you have the people from Indiana that buy them there and drive them into the city and sell them there? Immediately, you would, if that was the case over there, that would get rid of a lot of that right there. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You, of course, let's get into this, because this is a nice long conversation you had with Patrick Cooligan. Sometimes I love a news outlet that gives you a lot of context. This story they have about the failing schools and entire grades failing. If there's anything, I mean, I know people are going to get upset when I say this. Sure, there are a few charter schools out there that do okay, but clearly we've got a huge problem with the charter schools in this state because they're not pulling their weight as far as education. And frankly, there seems to be a lot of them that only exist to seem to try to get taxpayer dollars from the public schools and put it in their own pockets. And frankly, that's how it looks like right now.
Absolutely. And if you read that Minnesota Reformer story, that's in the first two paragraphs talking about a school that ran into that situation where they were overinflating their enrollment numbers and then running a huge budget deficit, and they had to close. And unfortunately, we do see a number of charter schools that really are struggling in the state of Minnesota that have 0 students in some of their grade classes that are proficient in math or reading. Zero.
Well, and it clearly
That's
is
stunning.
The teachers and the quality of education system is just not in place for these charter schools. And, it's so, I mean, I think why are we wasting our taxpayer dollars on these failed systems? And I think that we have to have this discussion now because there are other options on the table. I don't think this is it. And don't get me wrong. There are a small amount of charter schools that seem to get it right. But I have a friend that is a teacher, and he's at a private school, and he says, yeah, those charter schools try to hire away the private school teachers. They're looking for the best of the teachers. They're not just looking for someone that didn't get the job down at the Arby's to teach kids. And he says there's a big difference. You need to have people that are focused on quality education, and that's just not what you're getting at a lot of these charter schools.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to check out the article, MinnesotaReformer.com. Patrick and I only had a chance to even scratch the surface on some of these numbers, but it's pretty shocking to look through and see how some of our schools are really struggling, charter schools. And it's not even just urban schools located in the metro area. There's a lot of rural area schools that are also struggling as well with some of these same issues.
Brett, here it is. Patrick Cooligan and Brett talking about various issues from the Minnesota Reformer right here on AM 950.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, Brett Johnson with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. And today we are joined by the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. That's Patrick Cooligan, who joins us to talk about some of the stories and columns that they have been working on over the past few days. As today we are going to be talking about a new Republican candidate in the 2nd Congressional District that looks to be challenging DFLer Angie Craig. Plus, we will be talking about something from Christopher Ingram that he wrote, talking about some score issues with schools in Minnesota, and especially with charter schools that are oftentimes struggling when compared to public schools. So we'll be getting into both of those topics for today. As always, Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's start off talking about what's happening over in the 2nd Congressional District, because Joe Tirab is going to be running against Angie Craig in the 2nd Congressional District. Tirab is a Republican, and on paper, he has a very strong resume. He's a Harvard Law grad, a Marine Corps veteran, and former county and federal prosecutor, as well as being a son of a Sudanese immigrant. But in your column, you make the argument that despite these credentials, he's still pretty much on board with re-electing Donald Trump. And that really became official after his Republican opponent for the nomination, Tyler Rahm, challenged Tirab on his Trump loyalty. And on his website, you also noted this on Tirab's website. He also said, quote, "I will always support law enforcement and ensure that criminals are held accountable," unquote, which is pretty rich considering Donald Trump's attacks on the Department of Justice and the FBI. So this guy Tirab definitely on board with endorsing Trump. But to me, in essence, this seems like a guy who will be throwing away what seems like a pretty strong resume to, well, bow to Donald Trump again, like so many other Republicans do. And you wonder how successful this could be in a place like CD2.
Yeah, I think if you're a Republican who is interested in taking this seat, this is a pretty unfortunate development because the kind of Republican you need to win there is probably going to be somebody who is more bipartisan or has that disposition and is not going to just fall in line with the party line, and especially with Trump's line. As you mentioned, he has a real strong resume on paper. He's been a prosecutor, including of the Feeding Our Future cases, very high-profile cases. Did some high-profile work as a county prosecutor as well, Marine Corps. You mentioned Harvard Law, so he's got this great resume. But then the party is so enthralled to Trump that you can't win the endorsement. You can't get the support of the local activists that you need unless you endorse Trump. So he does so. And as I tried to point out in the column, you can't be a law and order guy and then also support Donald Trump. Trump's what he has said about the Department of Justice and the FBI, I mean, are totally beyond the pale, and especially for a guy who he's really criticizing, he's attacking Tayrab's colleagues, his former colleagues, the FBI agents who helped Tayrab in his cases. I mean, they did the investigating to bring those cases, and then he's going to endorse a candidate who has talked about defunding the Department of Justice and the FBI until they, quote, come to their senses, unquote. He also has this history of lying and dissembling, and of course the events of January 6th were sort of the opposite of the rule of law, and so Tayrab, to me, is he's really turned his back on his former colleagues, and not just in the Department of Justice and the FBI, but also the Marine Corps, because the documents that Trump stole and that had at his club in Florida, those were about American military capabilities and vulnerabilities, and the capabilities and vulnerabilities of America's allies and enemies. And so, military folks, including the former Secretary of Defense for Trump, has said that this could put American service members at risk. So this is the unfortunate place that we're in when you have Trump dominating the party still to this day.
Well, I like the note you also put in your column, too, where you talked about how when Trump made those comments to House Republicans, basically urging them to defund the Department of Justice and the FBI until they come to their senses, well, when Trump made those comments, Tayrab was working for the Department of Justice at that very moment in prosecuting cases. So, as you said in your column, essentially that would be saying, well, Tayrab, you can continue working for the DOJ, but don't do it for any pay because, well, House Republicans need to defund the DOJ and FBI until they come to their senses. So, yeah, that's a rather funny aspect as well, because this is a guy who worked for the Department of Justice, and yet here you go, you have a former president saying, let's defund this entire department.
Right. I mean, he wanted folks like Joe Tayrab and his colleagues at the DOJ and the FBI agents who assisted in those investigations to work without pay. And unless the DOJ would drop its prosecution of him, and of course it's now in two separate cases. One, taking documents that were not his, they were sensitive documents, and he was keeping them in very unsecure locations that were almost certainly exposed to foreign intelligence. And then the second case, where he refused to leave office despite losing, and cooked up that scheme to try to stay in office and refused to do the peaceful transfer of power. And Joe Tayrab's colleagues, former colleagues at the DOJ, I'm sure have been working 16, 18-hour days to try to ensure the rule of law and the safety of the American public and our democracy. And so, to me, it's insulting to his former colleagues that he would turn around and endorse Trump.
Again, we're speaking about Joe Tayrab, who is one of the Republican candidates looking to challenge Democrat Angie Craig in the 2nd District. And the reason why we're focusing on him is that, well, the 2nd District very likely to be Minnesota's most competitive congressional race later this year. So important to talk about the candidates in this race. And of course, it's not a guarantee that Tayrab will be the Republican nominee. As we did point out earlier, he does have another opponent, Taylor Rahm, that is seeking the Republican nomination. But talking about this race, has Tayrab tried to distance distance himself at all from Trump or some of those extremist positions? I know, granted, it's still very early in the campaign, or has he still largely embraced these types of positions? And has Angie Craig appeared concerned at all about the campaign for Tara, or are we still generally pretty early in the cycle for any of those conversations yet?
Well, that district is always going to be a kind of very swingy district, and Angie Craig, I think she knows that, and she's a very shrewd, careful politician, and has played that district very well. If you remember, she lost in 16, she won in 18, she won a close re-election in 20. She did expand her lead a little bit in 22, but I think that she's certainly not taking that for granted. Republicans are definitely targeting it. Tarab, insofar as there is a Republican establishment, he's kind of lined them up. Especially, he's got folks associated with the House Minority Whip Tom Emmer from our own 6th district, helping him. So definitely, it's an in-play district. I think it's probably going to be the closest race in Minnesota amongst the 8 congressional districts. You asked about Mr. Tarab's whether or not he's trying to distance himself from Trump. He was interviewed by Axios, and he kind of refused to say whether or not he would endorse Trump. And so that was a little odd. And then he kind of made this claim that later on at a kind of a campaign event that he told the reporter to quote unquote pound sand, which was not really accurate, not portrayal of the conversation from what I understand. And then once he was challenged by his opponent, Mr. Rahm, the defense attorney, then Tarab turned around and endorsed Trump, as they all do in the end. As Trump himself said, they all bend the knee, as he once said about Tom Emmer.
Yeah, absolutely. They always bend the knee, and that appears to be the case with pretty much everyone that's running as a Republican in just about every congressional district around the country. Read more about that column over at MinnesotaReformer.com, again, titled "By Endorsing Trump, Joe Tarab has turned his back on his former DOJ colleagues and Marine Corps." Again, find that over at MinnesotaReformer.com. I want to talk about another story you guys have been working on over there at the Reformer, and this one is from Christopher Ingram, which has to do with the performance of charter schools and public schools in Minnesota. So going to read through some stats briefly. So back in 2023, just last year, obviously, there were 78 public schools in Minnesota where 0 students in at least one entire grade level were rated proficient in the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment Tests in reading or math. That's according to the Department of Education, data that was analyzed by the Minnesota Reformer. So again, there were 78 public schools in Minnesota where 0 students in at least one entire grade level were rated proficient. Substantively, there was little difference between a school where 0% of 5th graders meet standards and one where 5 to 10% do. That was noted by Christopher. And for comparison, about 50% of all Minnesota public school students rate as proficient at math and reading, and that number has been declining since the onset of the pandemic. And most of the schools with the extremely high failure rates, 59 of those 78 that I was referring to earlier, are public charter schools. So these are some pretty eye-popping numbers. So I'm curious, what kinds of charter schools are these? Because 59 out of 78 of these schools that have students who that rated 0 had 0 students that were proficient in math or reading is eye-popping. So I'm curious, what kinds of schools are these? Because these are shocking stats.
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of got this idea to find schools where we have 0% of the kids are proficient, and that we thought that was important reporting to do because, well, it's one of the government's primary jobs, especially state and local governments, is to teach children math and reading to prepare them to be citizens, and so we didn't set out to write a charter school story. Let me say that. But then, as we did this reporting, that's what we found. We have that, as you mentioned, 59 of the 78 schools where we had a grade level at 0% proficient were charters, And so they include places like Rochester STEM, Skyline Math and Science, Minnesota Excellence and Learning Academy. And something that these schools often have in common is that they tend to be highly segregated. So at more than half of the charters, fewer than 10% of the students are white, and at more than a quarter, there are no white students at all. And so they're also often in economically challenged zip codes. The reason this matters is because there's a debate going on in Minnesota about the resegregation of our schools, and there's some researchers at the university who think that charter schools are at the forefront of that school segregation. There's a lawsuit that is seeking to desegregate our schools, at least in the metro, and there's 3 charter schools that have actually joined that lawsuit on behalf of the state, the defendants. They argue that they're often taking the toughest cases, and so they shouldn't be judged harshly on the basis of these proficiency scores, and they point to successes in certain high quality charter schools. But I think this is a bit of an eye opener. I hope it is for lawmakers about the way that we regulate charter schools, and as the birthplace of the charter school movement here in Minnesota, maybe we need to be paying closer attention, especially to these these schools that are really struggling to offer for their students to get proficiency in these basic skills.
Oh, this is probably a larger question than we have time to answer, but what's been happening at these schools where no students are meeting their minimum requirements? Because it seems to be kind of a mixed bag, where we have some cases like what's happening with the Dr. Josie R. Johnson Montessori School, which closed because the school was $700,000 in debt and had basically been inflating their enrollment numbers. You have cases like that. But then you have other cases where Christopher had a chance to speak to a couple of executive directors at local charter schools, John Crossan and Darius Hussein, who basically suggested that charter schools do face some systemic issues with their students. So as you kind of alluded to as well, sometimes these charter schools do take on students who may have dropped out of other public schools or have a history of truancy or come from very economically challenged areas. While in other cases, we do have charter schools that largely aren't doing their job and have some kind of shady finances going on. So it does kind of complicate the picture too as to what's happening with many of these charter schools that are struggling to have any of their students meet those minimum standards.
Yeah, Chris talked to a gentleman named Tony Simmons. He's the executive director of the High School for Recording Arts in St. Paul. And he said that most of his students have already dropped out of one or more of the more traditional public schools. And I mean, this is a pretty shocking statistic. Anywhere from between 35 and 50% of them lack a permanent residence. So I think if you're talking about this, such a challenged, marginalized student population, I think we can understand that they're not necessarily going to be scoring great numbers on the proficiency test. On the other hand, he gives the example of as you mentioned, the legacy of Dr. Josie Johnson Montessori School, where they just had this huge amount of debt, and they had been misreporting their enrollment figures by a lot. And so the state ended up state dollars follow enrollment. So the fact that they had a lower enrollment meant the state would stop paying them for students that were not in fact there. And once that happened, they had to shut down. So that's a situation where you're dealing with looks like financial mismanagement at best, malfeasance at worst, and so nobody seemed to be watching closely enough in that situation. Whereas, okay, maybe there's other situations where this charter schools are dealing with a student population that is extremely challenging, and we might understand that they're not meeting our proficiency benchmarks. But overall, I think the state needs to probably pay closer attention. That's just my 2 cents here.
And final question on this, again, going back to the Cruz Guzman lawsuit that you were talking about earlier, some of this data does seem to largely support that we've seen in this article that Christopher wrote going through this data of a number of schools that are having 0 students that are reaching those proficiency numbers. It does seem like the data really does support the argument that's being made in the Cruz Guzman lawsuit that, well, segregation has not been helping Minnesota students. So if the court were to rule in favor of the plaintiffs in this case, would a number of these charter schools be impacted? Would they potentially be impacted if the ruling does go in favor of the plaintiffs in that Cruz Guzman case?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think what's more likely is some kind of settlement. And I think that as far as charter schools being eliminated, I don't see that happening, especially in the settlement talks, especially when you've got these 3 charter schools that are party to the lawsuit now. But I think that the evidence piling up that racial segregation is bad for academic outcomes, I think it can only give significant leverage to the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. So we'll just have to see how the settlement talks go. And then, of course, any settlement probably is going to have to be approved by the legislature. It's a good question as to, are legislators paying enough attention? Because if this does go to trial and there's some kind of a remedy that the court calls for, now the legislature is kind of out of their hands. So this is another issue I think that they need to be paying attention to. But it is politically dicey, and so I'm not really sure if they are or not.
I'll encourage you to go check out Christopher's article over at MinnesotaReformer.com titled "In Dozens of Minnesota Schools, Entire Classes Are Failing to Meet Minimum State Standards." I encourage you to check it out because there's lots there we didn't have time to get to. So if you're interested in what's been happening with education in Minnesota and the charter school movement, which largely did begin in this state, make sure you check that out over at MinnesotaReformer.com. We have been speaking with Patrick Houlihan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer, again at MinnesotaReformer.com for the latest in Minnesota news and politics. Patrick, thanks so much for coming back on the show today.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's take a break and send things back over to Matt McNeil on AM 950.
Hi, I'm Mary T, inviting you to experience our integrative Mary T Health and Wellness Center, offering physical, occupational, speech, and lymphedema therapies. Experience our guided imagery, meditation, Tibetan medicine, dry needling, massage services, including cupping and oncology massage. Sign up for our free wellness screenings and learn more at marytwellness.com. All major health insurance providers are accepted. Come for therapy, experience wellness.
Hey, it's Patrick. February is the month for love. So when's the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it really deserves? If your carpet hasn't been professionally cleaned, you are breathing unhealthy levels of nasty dirt, dander, bacteria, and germs that keep recirculating again and again and again. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home with their Love Your Rug special. Get 3 rooms Zero Resified starting at just $119 and a free hallway. And don't forget dirt and dander's favorite hiding place either, your air ducts. This month, take $75 off when you get your air ducts Zero Res clean. Call Zero Res right now or go online to ZeroResMinnesota.com and say you want the AM 950 special. If you're a business owner, protect your employees and customers by getting your business Zero Resified by the pros at Zero Res. Call today for your commercial cleaning estimate. Backward or forward smells the same. Zero Res.
It takes teamwork to stay safe on Minnesota roads during the winter. You can help. When you see snowplows at work, slow down. Slower speeds can save lives. Don't crowd the plow and leave plenty of space between yourself and other vehicles. Keep your headlights on to see and be seen. Avoid distractions and always stay alert behind the wheel. This message brought to you by the Minnesota Department of Transportation, the Minnesota Broadcasters Association, and this station.
The vehicle for the Minnesota family is the Toyota Sienna, and the best place to get one is Rudy Luther Toyota in Golden Valley. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. I have 3 kids, and the Sienna hauls all your kids' sports and school gear easily. I can attest they're the safest vehicles, trust me, protecting your most valuable cargo. They're the perfect vehicle for the spring break or summer road trip, and the hybrid model is insanely fuel efficient. And Rudy Luther Toyota has a great selection of new and certified pre-owned Siennas. Get one today. It's my highest recommendation. Rudy Luther Toyota, west of Minneapolis on 394.
Winter is here, and there's a good chance your home isn't being heated efficiently. And it's likely because of air sealing and insulation problems. Inadequate attic insulation is the leading contributor to high energy bills, cold rooms, and ice dams. Great news, the energy-efficient pros at Snap Construction can fix it all. Stop the heat from leaking out and save. Call 612-333-SNAP or visit snapconstruction.com for your free infrared energy inspection. Install with Snap Construction and qualify for over $750 in rebates and incentives. State and city programs are now offering 0% financing for qualifying insulation upgrades. So call Snap Construction for your free insulation energy consultation and start saving on your energy bills. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed insulation and exterior contractor in the metro area.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Snow tapers off with a low of 5 above, but wind chills down to 12 below. Then Wednesday, sunshine with a high of 20. Maverick's Real Roast Beef sets the bar for roast beef sandwiches. Add freshly fried onion rings or French fries, and you have a winning combination. Located off Lexington Avenue in Roseville, 1 block north of Larpenteur Avenue. MavericksBeef.com.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Good to be back with you again here on your Tuesday, 952-946-6205. It has been wild watching the weather forecast today because and I just want to get into this really quick because you could end up having some slick conditions, especially if you're heading out for the caucus tonight. It was supposed to be an inch, okay? And then it looked like it was going to break apart at some point. And kind of not really hit the metro area. Now they're saying it is going to hit the metro area and we're going to get an inch or so of snow. I don't know. It depends on if this band of snow breaks up like they were anticipating it does. If it doesn't, yeah, we'll probably get an inch. And they're saying with it, so the cold air coming in behind it, it's going to freeze things. So it could get pretty slippery. So just be careful if you're heading out tonight. Keep that in mind. It is winter. As much as it doesn't want to be, it still is winter. We're supposed to have winter conditions. 952-946-6205. Reminder, I'm dropping them all. Listener Appreciation Month. That's still going on. As a matter of fact, this hour and the remainder of this hour, I'm going to be giving away a book. That's right. Tom Hartman's new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. A copy of that book is up for grabs a little bit later on this hour, so make sure you listen for your chance to call in. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. Mike Malaska, a lifelong Hibbing resident and iron ore miner for 42 years, called mining the most polluting industry. Malaska is one of several testifiers in support of Senate File 1416, known as the Prove It First bill. It prohibits the state from issuing permits for a copper sulfide mine before receiving independent scientific proof that a copper sulfide mine was operated elsewhere in the United States for at least 10 years and that a mine had been closed for at least 10 years without polluting the surrounding environment. Mining advocates argue the bill would hurt the state's ability to use the mining resources to a transition to clean energy, but supporters say the risks of the environment are too great. I want to give this is a great idea, because I've always been of the mindset of that you need to put these large international mining conglomerates, which are using these local ma and pa mining companies as a front for Antofagasta or the Canadians, the Chinese, or the Swiss. It depends on where you're at, but it's these international mining groups. And my mentality has always been, if you passed a law that said that the international mining company that basically is using this local company as a front is on the hook for the entire cleanup if there's an environmental problem. This will solve the mining problem immediately in Minnesota because they don't want to do it. Because the entire point is to pollute. They know they can't do it without polluting the living daylights out of everything. So they find a few stooges that are stupid enough to go along with this entire plan and basically say, they're going to develop a new technology, and until that happens, allow them to just mine. And you're like, okay, you do understand that that's your lake. And there have been, and I've done the reading, there have been numerous times where people said, we welcome them in. They said they would do it efficiently. They said they wouldn't do it. And now it's destroyed the environment, that their lakes, they can't swim or eat fish out of the lakes anymore, that because of the damage done by these mines. So no, I love this idea that once again, it prohibits the state from issuing permits for a copper mine before receiving independent scientific proof that a copper sulfide mine has operated elsewhere in the United States for at least 10 years and that a mine has been closed for at least 10 years without polluting the surrounding environment. So basically, it has to be operating for 10 years without polluting or be closed for 10 years without polluting. I think it's, and no, it's not an or. So both of those things have to exist. You have to prove that for 10 years, you can mine without any environmental damage, and that for 10 years, after a mine is closed, that there has been no environmental damage. And until those two hurdles are crossed, you cannot issue a mine permit for Minnesota. Fantastic. Love this idea. Fantastic. Great idea. Senator Jen McEwen of Duluth, the DFLer, she's a co-author of the bill, said copper mining, nickel mining differs from the iron and taconite mining that's familiar to the Iron Range. This type of mining has never not polluted the waterway surrounding the mine, she said, making the proposed projects near the Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness particularly worrisome. And I want to make sure we understand this. There has never been one of these mines done environmentally safe. So what you're saying is the Boundary Waters Canoe Area means less to me, and the tourism that comes in for that than the profit margins for some international mining conglomerate. Think about the stupidity of this argument. Just think about this. You are a person in northern Minnesota that prides yourself on the narrative of, I'm up in the North Country here and I like my fishing and my hunting and all these things. And you're saying to me, and you are dependent on tourism travel, particularly to voyagers in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. You are desperate to keep that tourism dollar coming in to that district, because if that dries up, you got nothing. Your entire economy is in shambles if that dries up. So you should be doing everything in your power to making sure the reason why people are coming up there for tourism reasons stays clean and tidy and stuff like that. And you say to yourself, I'd sacrifice the Boundary Waters Canoe Area and all the tourism dollars to make sure Antofagasta's corporate executive board gets a nice, tidy little profit margin. Think about that. If you are too stupid to understand that you would basically wipe out the tourism industry of northern Minnesota, which you are somewhat dependent on for this, then you probably should shut up and let the adults talk, okay? Because this has never been done environmentally safe. I want to repeat that. It has never been done environmentally safe. So allowing these clowns to go up there and even try it is a huge mistake. And of course, these same people are like, well, I didn't realize they were going to pollute the boundary waters when I signed off on it because they make big corporate profits. The state needs to come in and clean this up. That's the lake my grandpa and I used to fish in. Now it's dead. Why are the Democrats hurting me? Yeah, we can already see it. To open up these types of these mines in these areas is particularly acutely dangerous, not just to the water and not just to the environment of the area where the mine would be operating. and where the deposits would be processed or stored, but also to all the communities that are around the area who depend every day on the water and health of the environment for our communities and the pride in our way of life who we are, said McEwen. Julie Lucas, executive director for Mining Minnesota, argued in a statement that the legislation like Prove It First bill will hurt the state's ability to use its resources, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they're admitting we need to be able to pollute. Their entire, I mean, if you're against this bill, what your entire argument is that, hey, it's just going to happen. And so that's just it. I mean, and we're not even trying to hide it anymore. So apparently Aaron Murphy saying that it needs work. I don't think it does. With all due respect, Senator, I think that bill needs to be moved to the front of the line. Because once again, you're not saying you can't mine. You're not saying that you can't mine. What you're saying is you better do it responsibly or you're not going to get a permit. So the onus is on them. They're the ones who keep screaming about, we'll be environmentally safe this time. Okay, fine, prove it. What do you mean prove it? Well, you guys say you'll be environmentally safe. So prove that you're going to be environmentally safe. If you pass a bill that says we have to prove we're environmentally safe, you're just hindering mining. So you're not going to do it environmentally safe. Well, I didn't say it that way, but kind of by proxy I did. Yeah, that's what you're doing. You know, it takes a special kind of stupid. You guys have done a really good job up there of bringing tourism back in force up in northern Minnesota. You guys have done a pretty good job. There's a lot of great reasons to go into northern Minnesota. But if we start getting to a point where a third of the Arrowhead region has been poisoned because of one mine and all these people who's, hey, when Antofagasta was here and they told us that we were going to do it safe, I trusted them, even though they should have never been trusted. You know, I guess I have that on my face. We need to clean the mess up. You can't do it. It's gone. But I want to make sure you understand something. The desire of these international mining companies to rip apart northern Minnesota for every last ounce of precious metal for their own profit margins is voracious. And they will destroy this state with a smile on their face, calling us stupid idiots to our face for ever allowing them in here. I like the bill. Nice job, McEwen. 952-946-6205. Let's give a book away, shall we? Tom Hartman, who is, if you've not heard, is a good guy. He's on the station here from 11 to 2 every day. He's got a brand new book on the hidden history of the war on voting, who stole your vote, and how to get it back. We've got a copy of that book right now for caller number 5. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Caller number 5, you'll get a copy of Tom Hartman's new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, part of our AM 950 Listener Appreciation Month. Good luck. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Take a break. Come on back. Wrap up the show when we do return. It's the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. You know, over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
We served our country like those before us.
The camaraderie is what kept me going. You know, it was a dangerous area. All of Vietnam was dangerous.
I didn't know what to expect when I got back.
For the first 10 years after I got out, no one would have known that I was in the service.
I got home, got married 2 weeks later, got a job.
We came back, built lives, families, and communities, but we still had challenges.
The carnage of war left an indelible mark on me.
I would have intrusive thoughts. They're horrible nightmares.
Services and support that can help are available for veterans.
I went to the VA, talked to my doctor. I started doing groups. I started doing one-on-one counseling.
We found ways to move past these challenges for ourselves and for our families. At MakeTheConnection.net, you can hear our stories and find tools and services available to you.
The more I talk to people, family, friends, other vets, the better I feel.
True healing happens from within. When you learn to tap into the innate wisdom of your body, transformative healing can begin. Discover the intimate relationship between your mind, body, and nervous system. Learn simple practices that create transformative changes in your body and being. Join us at ResolvePainGuru.com for your journey into healing from pain, exhaustion, and stress. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's Resolve Pain Guru.
Hey there, Twin Cities. This is Andy Otto, your host for Twin Cities Pride Amplified. Join me as we dive into everything LGBTQIA+. From rights to culture, health, and events, we cover it all. Pride isn't just a June thing, it's year-round, and so is our show. Whether you're a part of the queer family or an ally, this is your space. Tune in to Twin Cities Pride Amplified every Saturday at 3 p.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Patrick, I do believe we do have a winner here. Who do we have?
Congratulations, Joan from Minneapolis. You've won a copy of Tom Hartman's new book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting.
Congratulations, Joan in Minneapolis. Guess what? I've got another book to give away tomorrow, so make sure you're listening for Listener Appreciation Month right here on AM 950. And reminder, go to AM 950's Facebook page, like that page, like the post on the page, go get the email newsletter at am950radio.com as well. That will get you in for possibly winning as well. Funny story. You remember how Republicans they don't like government, big government. Keep big government. You shouldn't be taxing us. We shouldn't be getting our money. Funny story. When money is available, boy, would they get in line fast. A proposal to expand the region that benefits from millions of dollars of taconite production tax payouts has riled Iron Range lawmakers intent on preserving that money for the communities that generate it. Minnesota State Representative Jason Rarick of Pine City introduced a bill. Pine City, by the way, not exactly mining country. He introduced a Senate recently that would bring in the cities of Moose Lake, Cromwell, and Riddle River into the taconite assistance area, a northeastern Minnesota region defined by school district boundaries that includes Aiken, Cook, Crow Wing, Itasca, Lake, and St. Louis counties. Rarick intends to also add the city of Barnum to the bill, with Talon Metals holding mineral leases in the area inside the boundaries of those cities, school districts. Rarick said he was approached by school leaders about the inclusion and is planning for future mining. Wait a second. You want taxpayer dollars to go to your school district? You guys got to get in a lane, man. I thought they were wasting my taxpayer dollars. All right. He's a born-again. Rarick sounds like a born-again liberal. Basically, you know, and to my knowledge, I don't think they're mining in those areas. They just have leases in those areas. I think that this money is meant for areas where they mine the taconite. Representative David Lisgard, DFL from Aurora, likened the bill to a robber baron proposal that he would not support it. The less you have, the more it means to you, and the more that you're going to protect it, said Lisgard of the Iron Range. The state law requires mining companies in Minnesota to pay a production tax instead of property taxes. The tax has been a major source of revenue in the counties, cities, townships, and school districts within the boundaries of the assistance area for more than 80 years. A large portion is shared with the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, which distributes its slice into businesses, communities, and school districts via grants and loans. Good idea. The latest total production tax produced in 2022 or 2023 distribution was more than $110 million, which includes a state contribution. Of that total, $19 million went directly to school districts. What each district receives is based on a formula. An Aiken County School District was included in the assistance last year as Talon Metals undergoes environmental review for a high-grade nickel mining in nearby Tamarack. Good luck with that, by the way. Sorry, you might need a lot of that money for cleanup. About 10% of Talon Minerals' package lies in Carleton County, where the proposed districts are located, but Talon isn't exploring that area and isn't part of the environmental review, said Todd Mallon, chief external operator for the company. Rarick said he doesn't intend for the districts to collect unless mining revenue is generated within their boundaries, similar to the Aiken County addition. Senator Grant Hochschild, the fellow from Germantown, also represents a large portion of the Arrowhead, said the bill as written would allow those Carleton County school districts to collect mining tax revenue if Talon begins operations in Aiken County. They border its McGregor School District, which is set to benefit from the Talon operations. Moose Lake School Superintendent Billy Joe Steen said many small northeastern Minnesota school districts struggle to gain voter support for operating levies to cover spending and state funding. Doesn't. Between the city's large seasonal population and prisons and the other state entities that don't pay property taxes, we just don't have the commercial property tax base that other communities have. She said any operating levy for the district, 600 students, would lean too heavily on homeowners. We're not interested in taking something away from somebody else, Steen said, but if that land is mine in Moose Lake, the district wants to benefit. If. The commissioner, Ida Rukavina, said in a statement, this is the IR commissioner, Ida Rukavina, said in the statement that the bill was premature. She said it would harm her department and the communities the school districts now receive taconite revenue. Senator Rob Farnsworth, Republican from Hibbing, said in a statement that he didn't support the bill, also calling it premature. Because I guarantee you, you want to know the truth is, my guess is going to be this. If a mine does open there, but I don't think you should hold your breath on a nickel mine, for God's sakes. But if a mine does open up there, fine. I don't know but I mean, first of all, is it part of this taconite mining? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be in there. It's going to be a different kind of mine. But fine, okay, I don't have a problem there. But for you to kind of just set this up as a way to not have to figure out a way to fund your schools other ways, I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. Here's a suggestion. Fund the schools in a better way, and then don't just depend on environmental disaster to make the schools happy, all right? Native Roots Radio, I'm Awake. That's up next. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow. Till then, see ya.
Cafe Latte offers made-from-scratch soups, salads,